It's the Sustainable Ministry Show, episode number 3, Breathing is Better Than Not Breathing. All right, welcome everybody. We are back and sitting with Stephen Ingram and Melissa Rao. And Jeff Dunrankin, new to the show this week. As we get started here, what have you guys been up to? What have you been up to outside of work?
Jeff, that's you.
Well, I have an empty nest right now. My kids are in college or out of college, and so I've been dating my wife again, and it's awesome. She is loads of fun. I remembered that. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. I'm dating my wife.
Is the feeling mutual, Jeff? Does she think you're awesome still? You might want to ask her. I'll
tell you what I'll do. I will text her while we're having the show, and I'll get back to you on that answer. So anyway, you guys answer the question. I'll text my wife and we'll let you know.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, outside of ministry architects work, I'm kind of doing other exciting work, and it's really not even launched yet, but I'm in the process of launching a brand new foundation. And so that's exciting. I don't want to go into too much details. I know, look at Jeff's face. He's like, oh, I can't wait to tell you all about it. But we're hoping to launch in January, and I can't wait to tell you all about it soon.
That's so great. When will we find out?
Well, ministry architects friends might find out next week. But hopefully we'll start doing soft launches throughout the next 6 or 8 weeks, and then we'll do a hard launch in January. So it's all about kids and eating well and being stewards of our bodies and creating an awareness about that. So
cool.
Yeah. My name's Stephen Ingram. Outside of work, I'm in a season right now, for the past few weeks at least, of imbalance. And so there's not a lot going on outside of work right now for me. So a lot of exciting things, a lot of important things, but my favorite thing right now to do is to come home and sit with my family and just breathe. That is the greatest thing in my life right now. So,
and breathing is better than not breathing.
That's right. That's right. You can be grateful for that.
Are you having time to cook?
No, but because we're hosting some people in Birmingham right now, I'm having some time to take them to all the amazing restaurants around Birmingham. I'm not necessarily eating as well as Melissa would like for me to eat in terms of health, but I'm definitely eating there from the culinary side.
Did you take them out for ribs? Did you take them out for ribs in Birmingham?
No, but we're going to. I'm going to take them out.
Dreamland?
Yep, Dreamland. That's it.
Well, I am Bryant, and outside of work lately, I've just been outside. Being a Florida boy, I'm not used to seeing changing of colors on trees and all that good stuff. So even after a few years of being in North Carolina, I still am amazed at the color change in the trees. And so we've been going out, doing some little day hikes and taking our bikes out and all that good stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Nice.
There's an interesting study that came out from the Barna Group. I guess the full results will be out next summer about pastors and their work in churches, the things that they feel good about, the things that they wrestle with, and the preliminary results of that are out and online, and we'll share that link as we go on. But there was a real dichotomy between what pastors feel good about and what they seem to struggle with, from feeling good about their home life and struggling with administrative work. As you guys read that, what sort of things stood out to you in the things that pastors really feel good about and feel like they could use some support with?
Well, I wasn't surprised that pastors feel closer to Christ as a result of their call. So I think like their faith deepens as they do it and when they lead. And to me, that's exciting. I think it's also indicative of the fact that we learn better by teaching. And so I think that's very clear that pastors, ordained clergy, their faith deepens as a result of their call.
Yeah, definitely. We even see that with like Sunday school teachers, no matter what grade they're teaching, right?
Yep.
One of the biggest things I noticed was just the continued struggle of balance, and I think probably spoke to me even more right now, just because I'm in kind of a scattered place, just like I said, for the past few weeks. But when I talk to youth ministers, clergy, just across the board, if you work at a church, you spend so much time giving of yourself to others, pouring into other people, that one, sometimes we forget to pour into ourselves, or have someone pour into us. And two, it's really easy to forget to breathe, to rest, just to take Sabbath. And so I saw that really reflected in that report. And I think it just continues to be one of the number one struggles that if you're in ministry, it's something you're going to have to constantly keep checks and balances on.
I was having that discussion with my brother last weekend. We were at Disney World at Epcot, and he's the president of a pretty big company, and he's checking his email. And at some point, he looked over at me and he said, "Why aren't you checking your phone? Isn't anything going on in your world?" And I said, "I think there is, but I've got a spiritual discipline to pretend like the world can live without me for 24 hours. Just, and he said, "What are you finding? Does the world survive without you?" I said, I've gotten to the place where I think it's theoretically possible for the for the world to survive without my kind attention. But once I had mentioned to him that it was a spiritual discipline, then like the 3 or 4 times I felt like reaching into my pocket and checking my email that day, I had to not, because I named it as a Jesus matter. But I think it's hard for us to buy into the idea that the world can get along without us, because so many people tell us that they can't.
Well, you know what? I got to do this really amazing project with Jeff Don Rankin and Mark DeBree out in Loveland, Colorado. And we got to film videos. Well, Mark and Jeff wrote 24 lessons. It's called Youth Leader Training on the Go. And I got to do 8 of their videos, and I had so much fun. But one of the videos I got to watch Jeff do, and he was talking about self-care. Jeff, you had a great illustration with the airplane mask.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Why don't you tell us it? Because I love hearing you say it. And
well, the idea was I was on a plane ride somewhere where I had a lot to do. I had a lot I was leaving behind. I had a lot I was going to. And how am I going to help all these people? And then the stewardess got up and gave you this great spiritual advice, which was, remember to place the oxygen mask over your own face before trying to assist others. So somehow that spoke spiritually to me, that how am I in the world am I going to go help others? And so I put my computer away, opened up my devotion book, whatever I was using at the time, and just spent the plane ride trying to get my act together before I went and tried to put the oxygen mask on other people. And it was very helpful.
Well, I think it's interesting. Yeah. I think it's interesting too when you think about that, because I think there's this really tricky balance in that of taking care of yourself, but at the same time not having to pretend to be perfect. There's this whole concept of the wounded healer, and I think sometimes we get confused and feel like in order to let everyone know that we've taken care of ourselves, we have to be perfect. And so we forget the confessional part of our ministry. We forget that we're wounded and broken, and that out of those broken vessels, grace pours out into the world. And so I think it's a really tricky balance people in ministry have to find. How can you take care of yourself, but at the same time, just be confessional, open, and just honest about our own struggles and our own pain.
Yeah. If you, according to the Barna study anyway, if you go to a convention and you see 5 pastors who tell you that everything is great, 2 of them are lying. Right?
Yeah.
Only 3 out of 5 in their study said that their life, that they're satisfied with the overall quality of their life. So, yeah.
Yeah. I was also reflective on the fact that, being married to a clergy person, an Episcopal priest, I got to go along to seminary with my husband as he had to with our children. And I was shocked at the amount of education they received in 3 years to receive an MDiv. but how little has to do with actual administration of churches. A lot of hermeneutics and a lot of biblical, history, etc. But there's really not a lot of emphasis on daily operations of running and managing a church. And so with that, I'm not shocked that churches have difficult times raising money, allocating funds, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, now's the season, right? Now's the season to be talking about administrative stuff like budgets and funding in churches. And many churches are either beginning or in the middle of a stewardship campaign right now. Many staff people have either submitted their budgets or finishing it up to get those submitted for their requests for next year to, hopefully intentionally think out what the cost of the ministry, all the things that they dream for and hope for in the church next year will be able to come true. So as people are doing that, what are some things that they should consider as churches are prepping their budgets and thinking about next year? Where should they really begin?
One of the things that we practice, and I've really come to love this practice, is we work from a zero-sum budget. In other words, we don't start off with the number that we had last year in terms of our budget. We start off with zero, and we say, okay, what ministries, if I could start from scratch, what ministries do I believe have the most impact, need the highest priority, and which of those ministries do I want to fund? And so it's not just, last year we gave, we had $1,000 in this line item, so we'll just carry that over. It's really every year, our budgeting process gives us the ability to really reprioritize, relook at our ministries, how we fund them. It also gives us a really amazing opportunity to prune. And to say, what, this ministry that we've been doing, whether it's been for the past year or the past 10 years, isn't really doing what we want it to do. And it might be important to some people, but it's not fulfilling the mission that we feel called to. And so budget time's a great time to prune, but it's also a great time to plant and to really reevaluate what we're doing both in our ministries with our time, but also with our money. So we start off with zero sum. And we start funding with every ministry having $0 in the line item, and it's a neat practice. It's disconcerting to begin with, but it works out every time.
Yeah, I now know of one church that does that.
Well, I'm reminded of a proverb that no one ever uses in their stewardship campaign that I know of, but I like it. And it's got this very Hebrew cultural ethic to it. And it's in Proverbs chapter 30, around verses 7, 8, and 9, somewhere in there. But basically, I think it's written by an individual. But it says, Lord, I'm just asking you not to make me rich and not to make me poor. Land me in that daily bread zone. That's where I want to be. And it goes on and it says, if you make me rich, I might forget who you are. And disown you and think that I'm doing it myself. But on the other hand, if you make me poor, there's behavior that might come out of that would embarrass both of us, So I just like that balance. But I feel like pastors get it. Again, on that Barna study, pastors get it in their own personal finances. Most pastors say, I have what I need and a lot of what I want. And it would be interesting for churches to sort of say, what we're looking for is our daily bread. And we're going to be content wherever that is and say yes to whatever that is and move on from there.
So where's the balance then between, setting a budget with what you've been given and also creating a budget that is a step in faith for where the church may go?
Well, I think as a good budget is kind of that. It's a statement of faith. It's where the church is putting its emphases on. It's how they are living into their individual mission as a church community. And so I think that's where the balance is. I love zero sum. It's definitely not the norm. I think it's very, very minimal that churches do it, but I'm fascinated by it because I think it gives churches the exact opportunity to do just that. Live into their ministry, live into their mission, and have their budget be truly a statement of faith. And I kind of dig it, Stephen.
Well, Yeah, the cool thing about it too is that it gives you margin. Because if you always just reallocate the exact same amount to the exact same areas, you have no margin for creativity, you have no margin for growth, you have no margin for faith. And so what it does is from the outset, it gives you some margin, which is pretty amazing.
You also have no margin for evaluation.
That's right.
Right?
That's
If
right.
people feel, what's the word I'm looking for? That they feel, that it's theirs, entitled.
Entitled, yeah.
If they feel entitled to it, it's really it's lowering the bar rather than raising the bar. And I can just think of many churches, especially with the music. I'm just going to say there lies a little contention between other program ministries. I know a lot of times the minister of music or the organist or whatnot tends to have this much higher ratio of funds coming towards their music ministry. Meanwhile, you might have a children's or a student ministry, etc., kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, if you will. And so having a zero-sum budget, living into that as a statement of faith, gives everybody an idea of, okay, what are our sacred cows? What do we need to protect? But what do we need to raise up as a reflection of who we are?
And, I feel some compassion for the pastors, especially at smaller churches, who have the impossible job description, right, of being gifts of administration and gifts of preaching and gifts of pastoring and gifts of everything. And so I think the good news for those folks is that there's somebody in every church who can do this well. So I think sometimes pastors are saying, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, but there's somebody in every church who can budget well. And we ought to go ask them.
Well, and that really goes back to what, Mark DeVries talked about whenever his whole philosophy on ministry changed. It was because a couple of guys from his church, because he was floundering, a couple of guys from his church stepped in. They said, hey, look, you're not really good at this area and this area. So let us just do that for you and show you how to do it better. And he was smart enough to say, okay, I'll hand that over to you. And so I think you're right, Jeff. I mean, Paul talks about being all things to all people. Maybe he was a little too ambitious in that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I kind of a neat story, and Stephen, this may tag on to your zero sum suggestion. I talked with a girl yesterday at a church that I've been coaching with, and we maybe over two different phone sessions, almost 2 hours of time spent working on her budget requests for this next year, and really thinking intentionally about like how many kids are involved, thinking through the norms, where the program's growing and where it needs support. They're looking to do small group stuff and wanted to put books in kids' hands, all that good stuff. Yesterday on our call, she said, Brian, I want to let you know my budget was accepted. And the cool thing about that was it's the first time she'd been intentional about it. Mm-hmm. First time they had really sat down and thought through what had they been gifted with and how could they be good stewards of that. Then after she had gotten it together, she wrote it out in long form and then sat down with the finance chair and just said, I want to explain this to you because you're going to get the questions. And so they walked through it together, and then she gave the finance chair the short form, the short request, and then she took that, the finance chair took that to the finance, of course, and was able to illustrate, and they came back to her and said, can you explain this to the other staff? Because we really like how you thought about what you want to do next year.
Wait a minute, is she a youth pastor?
Yeah, it was a youth pastor, yeah. And
youth pastor is explaining budgetary systems and processes to the rest of the church. Yes!
Yes. When's the last time that happened,
That's awesome.
Awesome!
Here's a narrative budget, right?
Yeah.
Here's another, sometimes, I think churches will sometimes make the mistake of keeping the budget process very tight, like in a closed room.
Yep.
And the powers that be will decide and hand down what ministries will get what. We've found, especially very recently, that folks are giving money, but they're giving money to very clear visions. Mm-hmm. And it's often those places who get money. So this is kind of a development raising money tool, is if you're able to be very transparent and help folks understand where that money is going toward, I think churches will find it a lot easier to raise the money they're hoping to raise in order to do what they want to do.
That's another time to find a partner. If that's not your style to ask for things, then finding a partner who cares about your ministry who will do that is great. Because don't you find that a certain number of the youth pastors, children's ministry people, or even senior pastors we talk to have a poverty mentality, right? That just says, nah, we really shouldn't ask for that. The dishwasher's broken, but it's not that big a deal. And I go in every Saturday and clean the dishes anyway. So that'll be fine. And I'll just carry that burden. And they don't mean it's fine. Excuse me, but that's just fine is a Christian's way of saying, damn it. That's just fine. The dishwasher doesn't work. That's just fine. Nobody really cares about putting in some new curriculum, but that's just fine. Anyway, we need to find partners who have a bigger vision and are willing to ask if we find ourselves in that spot.
Well, it's easy for us to become martyrs. I mean, it's a very fine line between this sense of humility of, oh, that's just fine, and then turning in to martyrs in our own head where we go, gosh, nobody cares about the youth ministry. Nobody wants to volunteer. Nobody wants to give us money. And really, really quickly, our attitude and our spirit can just drop through the floor. And that's when youth ministries end up siloing themselves because they end up feeling like they're this remnant. And that's just unhealthy for the kids. It's unhealthy for the parents. It's unhealthy for the church. And the other thing to add on to what Melissa was saying, I think it's transparency. But I think beyond transparency, I think it's casting a compelling vision where folks go, oh my gosh, now that's something I want to buy into. That's something I want to be a part of. Nobody says, gosh, I really want to buy into the status quo today. That sounds amazing. They want to be a part of something that's exciting. They want to grow and they want to be challenged. Yeah. And so casting a compelling vision, I think, is a big part of that.
I just read a fascinating article by someone, and I wish I recall from where I saw it. It's one church who's kind of doing this experiment. They took the number of people who were attending the church and divided what their operating costs were. So we're talking what it took to pay the bills, staff and building, grounds. That was it. And they decided what that figure was and then split it amongst every single member. So every member kind of had dues, if you will. And then it freed up a way for folks to, I guess, have a little bit more of a say where they put the rest of their money into which ministries, etc. And I just thought that was kind of crazy, but really outside the box and truly amazing. I don't know what else to say, but it's working for this church. And I just think, what a concept. We got to pay the bills. But then at the end of the day, how are we going to live in the ministry and what are we going to do and how are we going to put our funds? And so I just think it's interesting what churches are trying to do to think outside the box.
That's cool.
Well, it's interesting to me too. It kind of feels like giving, financial giving to a church, it's really like the last frontier for folks as they come into the church. It's the place where like we hold on to the tightest, and then once we're really in, then we'll give a little bit. It's kind of the you can kind of take the temperature of a church based on the giving. I think it's reflective of our relationship with God. It's reflective of where we are in that position, how generous we're willing to be with the church or with other people for that matter. And that's hard, but I think it takes some intentionality. It takes some real honest and open discussions within the church. Not begging, like, it's time to give your money, but where are you in relationship with God, and how is that beginning to steer you to be more generous as an individual and as a person, those that are around you? Much easier for me to say it than to make that transition, but I think it's one of the realities we face in a consumer culture.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of about investment, right? Where are we investing and how are we investing into our community? So this whole concept behind what that church was doing was really fascinating to me because it was kind of helping people see what membership is about. If you go to any club, there's membership dues, etc. But people know exactly what's expected of them and they all pitch in. So they all feel the sense of ownership. And so that's why it's kind of intriguing to me. But I think it's super important that we are living in a spirit of abundance and investing into our community of believers. So that's just my own little personal thought.
Well, I think it's interesting too. I always feel this really kind of tough tension because we always talk when we talk about stewardship. But if you look at the biblical concept of stewardship, it's not just about money; it's about time. And depending on where kind of what your socioeconomic status is, a lot of times your time is actually more valuable than your money. Mm-hmm. And so, if you're in a wealthier congregation that has tons and tons of money, they can just spew out onto the church, and a lot of times they're very, very generous, and they do. A lot of times, you will find that congregation has a really tough time volunteering. Mm-hmm. And so, I think it's interesting to talk about the two in balance and intention with each other. Of stewardship is not just giving of our financial resources; it's also giving of our time resources and our heart resources and all these other things, and really think about it in a more holistic way. Because here's the thing: I can have a $100,000 budget for my youth ministry, but if I don't have any volunteers who are willing to come and pour into our kids' lives, it's not going to work. And so talk about the balance and the tension of the two. I think is pretty important.
Yeah. Well, great thoughts, everybody. Budget season is certainly a difficult time for some folks. It's also an exciting time for a lot of churches, and so. As we come to a close, do you have any final thoughts or tips as far as churches and as they're going through this budget season, stewardship campaigns, all that good stuff? Anything that you would like to say?
I know it sounds obvious and it might be cliche for me to say it, but I think it's worth saying is that budget time should not necessarily equate to stewardship time, because I feel stewardship is a lifestyle. It's not a season. It should be an ongoing thing. And so I think too many churches will just say, okay, we got to pay the bills. We got to raise our budget. Therefore, we're going to call that stewardship. But I do think stewardship is a year-long thing, and it shouldn't be reserved to this, 6 to 8 weeks in the fall.
And that ties so well into what Stephen said, Melissa. We do it like volunteers, right? In many churches, we wait till there's a hole and a vacancy, and then we try to fill it back up. In the same way that we try and recruit ongoing throughout the year, we probably should do that. It's great.
My two words would be, or my advice would be compelling and be bold. Don't be afraid to ask for what you need. A lot of times, like you guys were saying earlier, a lot of times we take the path of least resistance. And I would just say, be compelling, be bold, be unapologetic about what you need to do the ministry you need to do.
What I'm thinking about is, we started with the Barna survey, and parts of it were encouraging and parts of it made me sad. There's a lot of stress among our senior pastors, and a lot of senior pastors, 3 out of 4 said, I'm not physically in the shape I want to be in. Mm-hmm. Most of them said, I don't manage my time well. Most of them said, I live in isolation. And then I think the challenge for us is we try to pin it on the church. And we try to pin it on God. And I, in my own life, that's been a mistake, although I've tried a few times to pin my problems on Jesus. And had these prayer moments more than once in my life where I had these prayer moments asking God what I really want for. And what do I really want? And I remember one long walk I took where I just read a book by Sacred Rhythms was the name of the book. And she said, you need to ask God for what you really, really want. Not the stuff that you're taught to ask for, but what you really, really want. I'm on this long walk, and I thought, what I really, really want is to be in better shape and to work less. So God, I'm asking you for those things. And the thought that came into my head that I don't think was my thought was, I want that for you too. But really, that's up to you. Good news is you're in charge of both of those things. But I'm on your side, so go do it. What the heck? That's not a gift. But anyway, I think a lot of the things in the Barna study are reflective of personal decisions that we're making in church life that we're in charge of. That's the good news. And the bad news is we're in charge of it. So we got nobody to pin it on.
Yeah.
So on that note, Jeff, you want to tell us where people can keep up with you?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, you can find me now in Panera, binge watching on Netflix the Person of Interest TV show. And if you don't see me there, you can reach me at jeff@ministryarchitects.com.
So is that your date night with your wife? A little Netflix and chill?
That's awesome.
Steven?
Well, I'm going to be at National Youth Workers Convention here in about 2 weeks now, I guess. Yeah, about 2 weeks. Like I said last time, I'll be one of the featured bloggers for the convention. You can read all those blogs at www.organicstudentministry.com, and that's where I'll blog anyways. And you can also pick up. I'm going to do this subtly. My new book, Organic Student Ministry. I'd love for you to check that out on Amazon at Challenge
I've
Pro.
quoted that book 3 times in the past 2 weeks.
Seriously?
Yeah, sure have.
Makes me happy.
Good book.
Thanks.
All right, Melissa?
Yeah, so I won't be, sadly, at National Youth Workers Convention this year because I'm going to be leading speaking and training at an Episcopal Diocese of Alabama. They're doing a regional cohort there, and I'm leading that. So that's what I'll be up to in just a couple weeks.
And where can people find you? Where can they keep up with you?
Feel free. You can email me at melissa@ministryarchitects.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I think Twitter's super easy. It's just Melissa Rao. I got there early.
Yeah, all those other Melissa Rouse, you beat them to it. Good job.
Right. The first one.
Yeah, and I am Bryant, Bryant at ministryarchitects.com. You can find me on Facebook too, facebook.com/Bryant Johnson. And folks, if you have a question about something we've talked about, feel free to tweet us. It's at minarchitects.com. That's MIN architects, no.com on the Twitter handle. Reach out to us there if you've got questions. We will respond. Thanks so much, you guys.
Bye.